Chapter 40. In practically no time, our favorite conglomeration of loonies have arrived at the specified place and time. Warble peeps over the side of the Rodnap, points down at the gently rolling plateau below, and yells out, "The planes! The planes! Buckle your seat belts, turn off all electronic devices, and all that jazz. I heard you listening to George Benson back there, Comfy. Sit down and shut your pie hole. We're going in for a landing. Keep your extremities and appendages, which, believe it or not, includes noses and ears for some of you, inside the vehicle at all times. Here we go." Soundtrack note: George Benson's Breezin' should have begun playing in the background at the start of this scene chapter. Warble has decided to land the craft airplane style this time, rather than hovering in the air and gradually lowering to the ground in the vertical landing or elevator, VTOL style. After at first gracefully gliding onto the meadow paralleling the Bighorn River, the Rodnap suddenly lurches and whooshes forward like greased lightning as if it had stepped on a giant banana peel. Picking up speed, the time and space vehicle careens from side to side as Warble frantically tries to regain control of the runaway craft. Just as Warble is about to take it back up for another go-round, the Rodnap upends against an oak tree, spilling out its occupants, one after the other. Plop, thud, thunk, and oof are about all that's heard for the next several seconds. "Nice flying there, Warble," Mary says sarcastically, standing up and brushing herself off, glaring ruefully at her husband. "It wasn't my fault, of course, Mary," Warble whines. "That grass there is really greasy. The whole Sioux Nation must have had a picnic there and wiped off their hands on the blades of grass, or leaves of grass, as Whitman, the inventor of boxes of chocolates, would say, after gorging themselves on Colonel Sanders' Montana fried chicken." "Bosh and balderdash," Ward says, turning his back on and waving his hand dismissively at Warble. "Excuses, excuses. You're just a rotten pilot, admit it," he mumbles. "What did you say, Robespierre?" Warble demands, pursuing his image consultant and pointing his finger at him. "I'd like to see you try to land an experimental craft full of dead weight in the high plains sometime," he challenges defiantly. "So would I. Let me fly the darn thing," Ward blurts out. "Maybe we could at least stay in one piece and not muss up our hair that way, damaging our dignity in the bargain." "Step back, little fellow," Warble goads. "You couldn't handle a machine like this. Besides, it's mine, and I won't let you," he finishes, arms crossed, pouting. "For crying out loud, Warble," Jacques says. "Fly the dang contraption if you want to, but tell us, why are we here, and what are we going to do?" "Now you're talking sense, LaRue. At least somebody here, besides me, is thinking straight and wants to actually accomplish something. What a bunch of losers and crybabies I've saddled myself with. Sheesh. Anyway, since you're all so stupid, I guess I'll, again," spoken like Tom Hanks as Forrest Gump in the film of the same name, to be specific like this, "again, have to give you some remedial education on what y'all should have learned at your mama's breast, or in kindergarten at the very latest. Back in YOOL 1876, that is to say, the year of our Lord 1876, the Plains Indians took advantage of George Strong-Arm Custer, who believed in fair play and thought the Indians would abide by the rules of warfare, too, by means of a sneak aerial attack, as the personable general was unselfishly laying out a lacrosse field for the Indians' amusement, right around here on this very spot, more or less. Instead of simply suing Custer in the circuit court, they prefer basketball to lacrosse and had specifically requisitioned a basketball court from the Great Father. The Plains Indians mercilessly bombed Custer and his men with tons of cayenne pepper wrapped around garden hose. What looked like tasty treats descending from the sky were, in actuality and in effect, sod-buster guillotines. Custer and all his men were decapitated by the uncannily accurate bombing carried out by the Plains Indians. For those of you who are wondering, the Indians ordered the garden hose from J.C. Penney. They were sent in on the Wells Fargo stage direct from Reno. Anyway, the Indians were so cold-hearted and cavalier that they were all casually chewing dentine gum as they flew the mission, and listening to Gary Owen on their radios, being played on the kazoo by some yokel on Prairie Home Companion, if I recall correctly. Soundtrack note: if the Chieftains haven't done a recording of Gary Owen yet, maybe we could talk them into it? Or Van Morrison? Wild Bill Hickok is partly to blame for the whole shebang, Warble continues, for he was the one who taught the Indians how to fly in the first place, when he personally took them under his wing, no pun intended, and trained them for his eponymously based production, Wild Bill Hickok's Western Extravaganza and Aerial Stunt Show. The Indian squad leader Mad Cow, who today, like Lou Gehrig, has a disease named after him, opened the ceremonies by yelling out, "Hey dudes, it's a good day to kill. Bloodthirsty savages to the battle stations. Mama's boys, whiners, wimps, milk toasts, and panty waists hide behind a tree and just watch a while." The worst thing of all was the music the Indians were listening to. They were flying so low, and solo too, by the way, as they had as many airplanes at their disposal as they had warriors, and had their radios blasting so loud that Custer could hear Gary Owen as clear as a bell. Distracted by the melodious tones and catchy rhythm, Custer was too busy break-dancing and moving to the groovin' to heed the warning some of his officers were alertly supplying him with. Shrewd, battle-hardened veterans that they were, some of Custer's junior officers had by this time perceived the possibly unneighborly intent of the Plains Indians. Warble sighs. If not for the distracting music, Custer would have won the battle, and then been elected president of these here United States. And the upshot of that would have been that instead of Rutherford B. Purple Hayes being elected president in YOOL 1876, who institutionalized hazing, from which Warble is still traumatized, by the way, Custer would have filled that lofty office and sat on that throne. Soundtrack note: Jimmy Purple Hayes. Poor old Custer, Warble sighs after a moment of silence, a tear running down his cheek. A kinder, gentler, more humble soul never existed, except for me, of course. But I wasn't born yet then, so he took the cake at that point in time. All Custer wanted was peace, and to see good come to the Indians. And to become president, of course. But who can blame him for that?